Ease can seem like a gentle, endless hug, a steady beat of familiar things, predictable companions and choices that pose no genuine risk. It's the role you know by heart, the home that never pushes you to adapt. The same daily habits offering just enough simplicity to lure you into stillness. Over time, this cushion of ease can become a snare, quietly dampening your drive and stifling your curiosity for what lies beyond the familiar and ordinary. Breaking free doesn't mean abandoning everything you cherish. It means shaking off the complacency that keeps you stuck. Missing out on growth and discovery comes from embracing calculated unease. Daring to live doesn't require recklessness. It demands a readiness to face the unknown and a recognition that true confidence grows not by avoiding fear, but by confronting it in measured ways. Each small step away from the ease trap builds resilience, fostering a sense of self-trust that takes root whenever you tackle a new task, learn a fresh skill, or venture into unfamiliar territory. This shift in perspective transforms challenges from threats into invitations, coaxing you to expand your abilities and your sense of what's possible. Over time, that expansion redefines how you make choices, measure success, and face setbacks, keeping you perpetually open to new adventures that might otherwise pass you by. Some view fear as the enemy of comfort, but in many ways, routine poses an even subtler threat. It rarely announces itself as a problem. After all, it simplifies daily life, offering a reliable framework with minimal surprises. The underlying issue arises when that framework grows so rigid that you avoid any venture that might disrupt it. An opportunity arises, maybe an unexpected invitation, a side project, or an intriguing course of study, and you dismiss it almost instantly, telling yourself it isn't practical or that you're too busy with existing commitments. Over and over, you let habit overshadow curiosity, and over time, this pattern takes root. The first step to easing out of the ease trap is detecting these well-worn scripts that govern your reactions to anything new. You might say, "Sin, I don't have the time, I'm not ready," or "and say won't be good at it." These rationales often stem from an underlying desire to remain in known territory, free from the tension of trial and error. But that tension is precisely where growth incubates. Each time you push beyond your established patterns, you build a bit more courage, a bit more resilience. It's not about leaping blindly into chaos. It's about taking measured risks that prompt you to expand your personal frontier. Adopting a habit of small experiments can disarm the grip of comfort. Instead of forcing yourself to undergo a full career change or relocate suddenly, you commit to testing the waters in minor ways, like sampling a skill in bite-sized lessons, connecting with a new social circle for a short event, or tackling a project that sits just outside your usual scope of expertise. These minor forays reduce the intimidation factor, quelling the fear of irreparable mistakes. Since the stakes remain controlled, each small success or even partial success signals that stepping outside your comfort zone isn't an act of self-sabotage, it's an act of self-discovery, revealing pockets of capability you might have overlooked. Another approach is pinpointing the distinction between rest and stagnation. Resting and renewing your energy, cherishing downtime are essential. Yet, there's a line between restful intervals that recharge you for future challenges and inertia that prevents you from ever seeking fresh experiences. When the pattern becomes so entrenched that you never feel the nudge to pursue anything novel, you know that ease has morphed into a trap. The fix might involve scheduling purposeful intervals of exploration, like allotting a few hours each weekend to a personal project you've always considered or attending short workshops where you know no one. Even the mild anxiety of meeting strangers or learning awkward first steps can jolt you from the safety bubble, teaching you to approach new situations without the reflex to recoil. Fear often masquerades as practicality. You think, sticking to what I know is wise, or I shouldn't waste time or resources on experiments. But daring to live doesn't disregard prudence, it simply refuses to let caution overshadow possibility. An attitude of exploration means acknowledging the potential reward in stepping beyond the usual, be it forging unexpected connections, sparking a new passion, or discovering an unused aspect of your identity. That's not a call for recklessness. It's an invitation to weigh benefits more fairly, giving novel pursuits a fair shot in your calculations. Discomfort can become a measure of progress, a signal that you're departing from established routines. Whenever you feel that tension, a slightly raised heartbeat, a flicker of doubt or excitement, it may indicate you're on a threshold where real growth could occur. If you interpret that feeling as a prompt to retreat, you remain enclosed in what's already known. But if you see discomfort as a sign you're stretching your boundaries, you can reframe those jitters as an ally. In that moment, you pivot from an "I must go back where it's safe" to "this mild fear is pointing me to territory where I can expand." Stepping away from comfortable routines refines your decision-making. When life is too cushy, you can end up operating on autopilot, rarely pausing to question if you're spending time on activities that align with deeper values. The friction of new challenges compels reflection. Why am I doing this? Is it meaningful or just convenient? That self-examination leads to more deliberate choices, both in minor daily things and in bigger directions like personal relationships, career goals, or creative endeavors. The willingness to disrupt your habits can thus serve as a catalyst for purposeful living. Each disruption forces you to reevaluate priorities rather than gliding passively through routine. Cultivating relationships that endorse growth instead of comfort helps you stay consistent in your pursuit of daring experiences. If those around you avoid venturing beyond the status quo, you'll likely mirror their complacency. On the other hand, if you surround yourself with people who see discomfort as a gateway to discovery, you create a collective mindset that normalizes risk-taking. Conversations turn toward new interests, crazy ideas you might try, or joint projects that challenge your combined skill sets. This synergy makes it harder to stay pinned in a comfort rut as you and your circle spur each other to ask, what's next? Small victories in escaping comfort can act as stepping stones for bigger leaps. Maybe you decide to talk to strangers at a networking event, a move that feels out of character if you're shy. Once you do it successfully, your mind logs that as proof you're capable of engaging new social contexts. Next time, you might attempt something bolder, like a leadership role that requires addressing a group. Step by step, the confidence gleaned from each small push erodes the assumption that you're limited to a narrow band of experiences. You discover broader potential within yourself, and that revelation motivates you to keep venturing outward. Failure, when it arises, plays a critical role here. Stepping beyond the comfortable means you will inevitably fail at times, but that's precisely the feedback loop that leads to mastery. Each attempt teaches you which strategies or skills need adjusting. Over time, failing forward, where each misstep brings knowledge, becomes a normal part of your evolution rather than a dire verdict on your abilities. This acceptance of trial and error often fosters a sense of resilience that stable routines alone can't grant. You find that real security comes not from refusing challenges, but from building the versatility to recover and adapt. Paradoxically, once you embrace the process of repeated small leaps into discomfort, your baseline sense of comfort expands. Activities that once seemed daring become second nature. The same person who once stuck solely to their own craft or routine can, within a year, pivot skill sets multiple times if it aligns with evolving passions. This doesn't mean chaos, it means fluidity, an ability to handle shifting landscapes because you've trained yourself not to cling to the safe harbor. Reward structures can deepen your commitment to stepping out. If you plan small incentives, like celebrating with a friend after finishing a short workshop or taking a short personal trip once you've completed a challenging project, you reinforce the link between discomfort and positive outcomes. Over time, you learn to self-motivate even without these external rewards, but they can help jumpstart the habit when you're new to pushing boundaries. You realize the satisfaction of having done something out of the ordinary surpasses any token reward, yet those tokens can keep you aligned in the early stages. A critical shift involves rethinking the concept of homeostasis. Usually we treat stability as desirable, and in some ways it is. Basic security is important. But if your stability means your mind or environment never evolves, the stability can trap you in patterns that neither serve your aspirations nor fully utilize your potential. By intentionally adding elements of challenge, you recalibrate that stable state to include regular growth cycles. It becomes stable in motion rather than stable in stagnation. This dynamic sense of homeostasis includes rest and introspection, but periodic leaps outward, ensuring you don't default to a static plateau. Mindfulness practices can assist in recognizing the exact moment when comfort morphs into complacency. If you take a few minutes daily to reflect, asking, where did I resist stepping out? Was it fear or a real limitation? You can differentiate between healthy caution and pure inertia. These reflections hold you accountable to a bigger question: am I letting easy routines stifle my personal evolution? Over time, the repeated act of noticing helps you catch the shift earlier and choose boldly in smaller situations, so it's less daunting when big crossroads arise. Trust in your adaptability grows. People often fear that stepping outside the comfort zone might break them, but you usually discover that your resilience surpasses your initial estimate. Once you've navigated a handful of new experiences, messy as they might have been, you see that your sense of self stays intact. In fact, it often expands, incorporating the new skill or knowledge gleaned from each foray. That expanded self-image fosters a mindset of "I can handle more," which translates into bolder living by default. Socially, you might find new communities more welcoming when you approach them with genuine curiosity. Breaking from the comfort trap includes encountering diverse groups, whether it's for hobbies, professional meetups, or volunteering. At first, you might feel like an outsider, unsure of how you'll fit in. But if you push through that initial awkwardness, you not only widen your social circle, but often pick up fresh perspectives and alliances. Over time, you discover that stepping outside your usual social bubble brings enriching connections that your older, safer patterns never offered. Creativity flourishes when you decline to remain comfortable. The creative spark thrives on novelty, on connecting dots that a repetitive routine might hide. When you welcome small doses of uncertainty, learning a new technique, traveling to unfamiliar places, or reading diverse topics, you feed your brain unique inputs that can spark fresh ideas. Conversely, always repeating the same cycles risks dulling your inventive edge. By seeking out a bit of daily disruption, your mind stays limber, ready to see solutions in unexpected patterns. Shattering comfort helps you weigh your own limitations more accurately. Because if you never test the edges, you're left guessing how far your skills extend. In confronting new experiences, you might confirm you have a knack for certain things that you'd never have guessed, or you might fail but gain clarity. This approach doesn't work for me, let me pivot to something else. That knowledge is valuable, guiding you to refine how you spend your time and energy without trial. You remain in a sort of limbo, never quite sure what you're really capable of or passionate about. Learning to live boldly isn't about rejecting comfort altogether. Certain forms of comfort, like supportive relationships or restful downtime, are healthy foundations that help you operate effectively. The comfort trap arises when you turn these foundations into immovable boundaries, never venturing an inch beyond them. One way to dismantle those boundaries is by reframing the idea of what's safe. Often you tell yourself that staying where you are involves less risk, yet there's a different kind of risk in remaining static, the possibility of missed opportunities, unchallenged talents, or an existence too reliant on habit rather than intention. If you pivot your view of risk, understanding that inaction may rob you of experiences every bit as much as bold action might impose difficulties, you balance your outlook. It stops being so obvious that the known path is automatically the correct one. Instead, you see each choice, safe or bold, as having potential upsides and downsides. Developing small daily habits of experimentation can keep you from falling back into comfort's lure. Suppose you dedicate a short window each day to something uncertain, attempting a new recipe, reading a genre outside your norm, reaching out to someone you haven't spoken to in years, or exploring an unexplored topic. Even if the step feels trivial, it disrupts the autopilot cycle that might otherwise define your routine. Over weeks, these frequent, if modest ventures accumulate, gently nudging you to be flexible and curious. They shape your mindset into one that regularly questions, is there something new I can try today? Rather than defaulting to, I'll just repeat what I did before. Because comfort often clings to certainty, you can combat it by tolerating incremental uncertainty. That doesn't mean plunging into massive chaos, but learning to accept slight unknowns. If you always plan an outing to the tiniest detail, try leaving one aspect open. Let yourself discover a spontaneous cafe or route along the way. These small touches of unpredictability build your nerve for bigger leaps. Eventually, you might be open to more significant spontaneity, switching up vacation destinations, tackling a surprising professional pivot, or engaging with people you never believed you'd understand. Community support or mentorship can accelerate your break from comfort. Sometimes hearing how others found unexpected fulfillment by venturing off their usual path offers a blueprint. You might read about someone who changed careers later in life, overcame stage fright, or moved to an unfamiliar place, and realized it wasn't an out-of-reach miracle, but a series of managed steps that started with a decision to be bold. Having a real-world example shows you precisely how someone pieced together the puzzle of stepping outside routine, and their success story can energize you when your own excuses start bubbling up. Identifying your specific comfort triggers can clarify what you need to challenge. Maybe it's physical ease, like preferring short, familiar commutes and routines that require minimal exertion. Or perhaps it's mental familiarity, always reading the same types of books or watching the same style of shows. Some people realize their comfort zone is social, restricting themselves to a tight-knit group and never meeting new people. Once you see which dimension of comfort holds you most firmly, you can craft small, repeated challenges in that area. If it's physical, you might try a short exercise class that intimidates you slightly. If it's social, you might aim to greet someone new at events. Each instance chips away at the complacency. Paying attention to mental self-talk remains vital. Each time you consider a new move, an inner dialogue might pop up with reasons to avoid it. I don't have the necessary skills. It'll take too long to see returns, or I'm I'm not suited to that environment. Not all these remarks are false, but many exaggerate or oversimplify. By engaging with them, you parse which parts are genuine limitations, like a real resource shortage, and which are fear-based assumptions. Armed with that clarity, you can formulate a plan, either find ways to address real constraints or push past the contrived ones. This reflective practice ensures that each new pursuit is grounded in truth, not lazy rationalizations. Another compelling method is to schedule deliberate discomfort sprints. Set a time where you commit to tackling those things that feel slightly beyond your normal capacity. It might be an hour a week or one day a month, dedicated to confronting a mild fear or an unexplored interest. During that sprint, you don't allow yourself to default to comfort. You pick something challenging, a creative jam session if you usually hesitate to produce original content, or a face-to-face meeting if you typically communicate only via written channels. The consistency of these sprints creates a new habit. You no longer wait for discomfort to appear, you proactively seek it in controlled doses, transforming it into a tool rather than an obstacle. Support systems can help by providing feedback loops. If a friend knows you're striving to live more boldly, or they can check in, "Have you stretched your boundaries this week?" Or, "What new step did you take today?" This accountability encourages you to plan for that question, ensuring you're not slipping back unnoticed. Gradually, you relish reporting that you tried something unusual, took on a side gig, proposed an idea at work, or learned a new skill. Over time, these supportive relationships become part of your environment, reinforcing daily that you're on a path of expansion. An interesting byproduct of consistently moving beyond comfort is that your successes start to appear externally. Maybe you get recognized for bringing fresh perspectives, or you find yourself building broader networks. People might call you adventurous, open-minded, or someone who's unafraid to adapt. In truth, you're just practicing consistent micro-leaps out of your safety net. Yet that pattern accumulates into outward changes. This external recognition can serve as further impetus, reminding you that your internal shifts are tangible enough for others to see. Naturally, this journey has bumps. Even if you've embraced bold living for months, a particularly tough challenge might make you revert to old habits. You could hit a block in a new skill, face harsh critique, or simply experience burnout. Resilience here comes from remembering why you started. Complacency feels harmless at first, but can lead to a slow drift away from personal fulfillment. By recalling your reasons, you maintain perspective, seeing an obstacle not as a sign to retreat, but as an inevitable part of forging your braver self. Distraction plays a role in the comfort trap. Sometimes you stay within known territory, not out of conscious choice, but because you occupy yourself with busy work or mindless entertainment that keeps real challenges at bay. Gently restricting those distractions, like setting a limit on passive entertainment, can open windows for more deliberate exploration. It breaks the cycle of numbing yourself with safe routines, making room for at least a bit of daily improvement or experimentation. Learning to celebrate partial victories further cements a spirit of boldness. If you only cheer yourself on when you fully mastered something or hit a big win, the intervals between successes might feel long. But acknowledging partial steps, like drafting a rough plan, making an initial attempt, or hitting an intermediate milestone, keeps motivation stoked. Bold living isn't about uninterrupted success. It's about welcoming the entire spectrum of outcomes, from early awkward efforts to refined accomplishments, and applauding your willingness to try. New social circles or cross-disciplinary pursuits help you see how broad your comfort zone can become. Perhaps you join a local group focusing on a subject outside your usual passions, like a cooking club if you're typically all about tech, or a debate club if you're usually reserved. Each session you attend expands your interpersonal skills and potentially ignites unexpected interests. Over time, these crossovers might blend into your main path, fueling creative synergy or unique collaborations that would never occur if you stuck rigidly to your known sphere. Setting a personal mantra or reminder can guard you against creeping comfort. You might put something inspiring in your planner, a little motivational quote of the week. These reminders, even though they're simple, act as mental nudges whenever you start to shy away from a new idea or revert to mechanical habits. You glimpse the phrase and reconsider. Over weeks of exposure, the phrase lodges in your subconscious, becoming an internal checkpoint that triggers a second thought each time you're about to choose safety over exploration. Reflection journals often serve as powerful tools in measuring your progress away from comfort. Recording daily or weekly experiences, especially moments that felt challenging, provides a timeline of growth. You might know what made you nervous and how you handled it. Did you decide to proceed anyway, or did you hold back? Over time, you see a shift. Things that once made your heart pound become routine, and you might find new things to push your boundary further. This record clarifies your journey, helps you correct course if you slip into old patterns, and serves as evidence of how far you've come. New experiences can often feel risky because they dismantle the image you hold of yourself or the role you think you must play. Stepping outside your known habits may force you to confront parts of your identity you've never tested, and that confrontation can be unsettling. Yet, it's precisely by meeting that discomfort head-on that you unearth hidden strengths. This phase of unmasking personal limits can be transformative. Picture someone who has always labeled themselves not a leader. Once they volunteer to coordinate a small team event, they might discover unexpected satisfaction in guiding others or facilitating discussions. Even if the first attempt is riddled with hiccups, the act of trying shows them that the label was self-imposed, not carved in stone. As a result, they might gradually find themselves accepting other roles that require a bit of leadership. A similar pattern arises if you see yourself as terrible at public speaking, then agree to speak in front of a small group. Each short presentation chips away at that assumption, replacing it with real evidence of progress. Over time, your willingness to see identity as fluid rather than fixed extends beyond these small tests. You learn to ask, what other areas have I boxed myself in? Sometimes even the aspects of your life you take for granted, like the type of music you enjoy, the hobbies you pursue, or the social circles you keep, can morph if you explore what lies on the periphery. Discomfort here isn't a threat. It's an indication that you're expanding your repertoire of experiences. That expansion, while never completely devoid of apprehension, can become exhilarating as you realize each new step adds dimension to who you are. Another layer emerges when you deal with criticism or judgment from others who are firmly rooted in their own comfort zones. If you start venturing into new fields, shifting your routine, or adopting novel interests, you might encounter pushback. People might question why you're bothering or accuse you of being scattered. This external pressure can pull you back toward the familiar. Yet it's crucial to recognize that those doubts are a projection of their concerns, not necessarily a reflection of your path. By deliberately choosing to test the uncharted, you confirm to yourself that it's your life to explore. While it's wise to listen for constructive feedback, you don't let vague disapproval sway you from beneficial experiments. In grappling with the unknown, resourcefulness becomes paramount. When you remain locked in routine, you seldom need to improvise. Everything is predicted and controlled. Once you step out, you'll likely face scenarios where you lack an immediate solution. That's where you either adapt on the fly or learn something new. Through these moments, you sharpen your problem-solving, creativity, and resilience. Unexpected delays, confusion about a process, or uncooperative conditions force you to think differently than you would in your standard daily tasks. You might discover new ways to organize, communicate, or plan, all stemming from an environment where you can't rely solely on habit. It helps to dismantle the myth that bold living means zero fear. On the contrary, fear often remains, but it morphs into a signal that you're stretching your boundaries, hitting that sweet spot where growth thrives. The aim isn't to eliminate worry, it's to interpret it. If anxiety arises before you volunteer to spearhead a project, you remind yourself it's a natural reaction to novelty. Instead of stepping back, you let that alertness hone your preparation. Maybe you read a bit more, speak to someone experienced, or outline your plan in detail before diving in. Using fear as a cue to prepare rather than a command to retreat transforms it into a companion for constructive action. Meaningful relationships often deepen when you break from comfort by exploring fresh hobbies, social circles, or experiences. You meet people who share those new interests, forging bonds that surpass the casual links of routine. In some cases, it can rekindle existing connections. A longtime friend might join you in an unfamiliar endeavor, and you both rediscover layers of collaboration or mutual support that stale comfort didn't allow. This spark of shared novelty can renew ties that might have gone dormant under predictable patterns of interaction. Expanding your daily or weekly regimen with micro-challenges can elevate your everyday confidence. Maybe you commit to making a single daily decision that feels edgy, like trying a different route to work, striking up a conversation with a stranger, or tackling an aspect of a project before you feel ready. Each small leap, once completed, quiets the internal critic that argues, "You must wait for perfect conditions." Soon that critic's voice grows weaker as you log multiple examples of times you acted without overthinking and still landed on your feet. Failure, when viewed through the lens of bold living, becomes a learning milestone rather than a final condemnation. If a new strategy falls flat, it's not a sign that you should scramble back to safe, unchanging routines. Instead, it's a moment to dissect what went wrong, retain the lessons, and carry them into your next challenge. This approach to failure, where each setback is a piece of feedback, frees you from the belief that any slip-up ends the journey. Instead, it just recalibrates your direction, making future forays more informed. Permission to be a beginner again can be a game changer. Recognizing short windows for experimentation weaves exploration into your everyday life. If you wait for large-scale changes like a total career switch or a big relocation, you might never start, but a short free slot in your schedule can serve as the perfect testing ground. Perhaps you devote half an hour to reading articles on a topic outside your field or attempt a novice-level tutorial for a new craft. Over months, these little stints accumulate into significant competence you would have missed had you stuck with your usual reading list or skill set. Encouragement to articulate your developing sense of boldness can help anchor it. Maybe you keep a short log of times you chose the unfamiliar path and note what you learned or how it felt. By reviewing these entries, you observe patterns, certain areas where you shine when venturing out, or triggers that make you recoil from risk. Comfort often coincides with mastery, or at least familiarity. You know how everything works in your current realm, and that feels good. Yet the pride that stems from being the local expert can gradually stagnate into a fear of being seen as clueless in a fresh domain. To break free, embrace the mindset that it's okay, even exciting, to be the inexperienced one sometimes. Glean new knowledge, develop empathy for others learning a skill, and reawaken a sense of wonder that seasoned expertise can sometimes dull. This log can spark reflection on how to extend that boldness to aspects of life still mired in complacency. Bringing creativity into otherwise predictable things can be another subtle method of injecting boldness. Even if your job is heavily process-based, you could explore new tools or alternative workflows to see if they raise efficiency or enjoyment. You might rearrange your living space in an unexpected style or rotate house tasks with a friend or partner to keep things from becoming routine. These little acts of innovation remind you that no aspect of life is permanently locked in place. Your choices can reshape even the most mundane corners. Facing your own limitations head-on fosters humility, which can ironically support boldness. Once you've acknowledged that certain skills or knowledge lie outside your grasp, you can try to get some help or find somebody to mentor you. This willingness to admit you don't have all the answers reduces the pressure to stay safe in the zone where you feel competent. As you receive guidance, you learn faster and see how collaboration extends beyond the boundaries of your personal comfort. A shift occurs over time. You cease dividing experiences into safe and unsafe categories and start viewing them as simply new or familiar. This subtle reframing underscores that stepping out is merely stepping into the unknown, which can be systematically approached rather than avoided. You plan and research just enough to mitigate extreme risks, then proceed with a sense of manageable excitement. If traveling is part of your plan, exploring new places, cultures, or environments can jolt you from the lull of the familiar. Suddenly, you're navigating unknown streets, cuisines, and languages, forced to adapt moment by moment. That direct experience with unpredictability can break mental loops that say, "I must control everything." Instead, you see that a bit of chaos often leads to rich memories and newfound confidence. When you return home, this perspective carries over, making you more inclined to say yes to local changes or group events you once ignored. As each stretch outside comfort becomes less dramatic, you'll likely crave additional challenges. It's a self-reinforcing cycle. You prove to yourself that venturing off the beaten track brings fresh insights, relationships, and personal breakthroughs. Soon the question becomes not, why would I leave my comfort zone, but why would I stay in it too long? The default flips. You come to see risk as essential seasoning for a fulfilling life, rather than a hazard to dodge. In the process, your baseline for what's normal or easy expands. Things that once registered as daunting fade into routine, allowing your horizon to stretch further. If a year ago public speaking was unimaginable, but now you can comfortably present before a small crowd, your mind is freed up to consider giving a more substantial talk or collaborating on a workshop. That upward spiral is the hallmark of living boldly. Each phase, once integrated, becomes the new foundation, and you can scan the horizon for the next frontier. Navigating beyond comfort often involves dismantling the assumption that your path must be linear. Comfort can give the illusion of a neat, steady progression. Each day resembling the last, your goals following a predictable sequence. But embracing bold living means you allow for detours. You might attempt a side project that at first seems unrelated to your main ambitions, but ends up providing essential skills or contacts. This acceptance of nonlinearity reduces the pressure to make each step flawlessly advance a single plan. Instead, you open yourself to tangential pursuits that reveal unexpected overlaps. Often, these side ventures supply a fresh perspective on your core pursuits, introducing techniques or insights you'd never discover by staying only in your lane. The outcome is a richer, more layered journey, one with stops, starts, and pivot points that gradually forge a versatile skill set and worldview. Within that exploration, it's key to honor your intuitive pulls. When you feel a tug of curiosity towards something new, your comfort zone might hush it, saying, "That's frivolous," or "stick to what you know." Yet that nudge could indicate a hidden passion or an avenue waiting to enhance your life. By giving it a chance, even a limited test run, you respect your inner signals. Not every experiment will bloom, but each one clarifies what resonates, refining your sense of direction. Self-compassion threads through this process. Breaking from comfort can evoke doubt, and sometimes you'll regret a move or chastise yourself for not being bolder sooner. Practicing gentle self-talk, "I took a step, learn from it, and that's enough for now," helps you avoid turning stumbles into shame. Self-compassion ensures that stepping into the unfamiliar remains a positive growth cycle rather than a harsh test of worthiness. Humor, too, can play a surprising role. When you face an awkward moment outside your zone, botching a new technique, or failing to impress an unfamiliar crowd, allowing yourself a small laugh often dispels the tension. It reminds you not to treat every miscue as a crisis. Laughing about your own clumsiness or confusion can transform anxiety into lighthearted resilience, letting you bounce back rather than internalize the mishap. Even minor disruptions in daily patterns can yield profound realizations. If your morning routine has been the same for years, introduce small twists. Wake up earlier by 10 minutes to reflect, or swap your usual coffee brand for a flavor that feels strange. These little changes break autopilot. You might find that the new coffee sparks interest in other products from the same region, or the 10-minute reflection period sparks a creative solution to a lingering problem. Through these modest tweaks, you train your mind to consider alternatives in bigger decisions too. Another angle is inviting reflection on mortality or the finite nature of time. While this can sound somber, it can galvanize you to pursue experiences and growth now, rather than deferring them indefinitely. Comfort often lulls you into believing there's infinite opportunity down the road. Remembering life's brevity provides urgency. If you want to learn a second language, craft a piece of art, or start an initiative, there's no endless tomorrow to wait for. This mindset can dismantle procrastination fueled by comfort, pushing you to make the most of the present. Comparisons can be a double-edged sword. On one hand, looking at people who embrace bold living can inspire you. Their stories highlight the benefits of stepping out. Fresh achievements, personal breakthroughs, or remarkable resilience. On the other hand, comparing your behind-the-scenes doubts to their polished narratives can stoke insecurity. If you assume they face no obstacles, the reality is most people who venture beyond comfort wrestle with uncertainty. They simply decide that uncertainty is an acceptable price for genuine discovery. When you do find mentors or role models, make sure you focus on how they tackled the unknown, not just the success they ended with. Try to emulate the daily or weekly practices they used, perhaps a routine of consistent skill building or a method of networking in unfamiliar circles. Adopting their process helps you replicate the spirit of boldness in your own context, rather than merely admiring a final outcome that might have taken years to unfold. Physical challenges often provide a concrete metaphor for escaping the comfort trap. Activities like rock climbing, martial arts, or endurance sports demand you confront your physical limits in the moment of stress. Muscles burning, heart pounding, you either adapt or quit. Surviving that challenge rewires your perception of capacity. If you conquered that physical trial, maybe you can apply similar willpower to mental or emotional hurdles. So a marathon runner might reason, and if I can push through mile 20, I can push through an intimidating job transition or creative block. Likewise, practicing minimalism or decluttering can be a surprising route to leaving comfort. Reducing possessions that create a sense of stable identity forces you to realize you're not defined by items or a certain environment. Letting go of the attachments that anchor you to the same living space or style can jar you into re-evaluating. You begin to think, if I can do with less stuff, maybe I can do with less predictability in my routine as well. It all interlinks. Teasing out a single comfort-based habit can unravel a web of dependencies, freeing you to adapt more fluidly. Travel is a classic catalyst, but you don't need to roam across continents. Even traveling locally to lesser-known spots can offer a condensed version of the same effect. New faces, different customs, maybe a fresh dialect of your own language, each small cultural or scenic shift prods you to be more observant, more on your toes as you handle each mini challenge. Like ordering unfamiliar cuisine or navigating unusual terrain, the mental muscle of coping with novelty grows stronger, making bolder leaps in other facets of life less daunting. Observing your emotional cycle when stepping out can yield rich insights. At first, you might feel excitement tinged with fear, then a rush of adrenaline as you take the initial step, followed by either relief if it goes well or disappointment if it falters. But in either case, you generally see that the world doesn't collapse. Even if you make a blunder, people move on, you learn something, and life continues. That realization brings a sense of liberation, recognizing that the cost of stepping outside comfort is often smaller than you'd imagine, while the reward can be immeasurable. In time, you might restructure your day to naturally include bold choices. This can mean adopting a weekly ritual like Untry It Tuesday, where you experiment with something new each Tuesday. Maybe a new skill, a new social activity, or a novel route to handle errands. By making boldness a recurring theme, you transform it from an occasional spike of courage into a consistent trait. The more you do this, the more your self-talk revolves around expansion. Phrases like, I can't handle that, shift to, I haven't tried that yet, reflecting the view that you're an evolving being, not a static entity. This internal narrative change might be subtle, but it's crucial. Your mind sets fewer arbitrary limits if it constantly rehearses the possibility of improvement. Another beneficial technique is to keep track of your progress in a boldness journal or chart. Each time you do something that felt beyond your customary routine, you note it. Over months, you see a pattern forming, a line or a list that rises steadily. If you ever doubt your capacity, you can look at that record and recall the myriad times you pushed your boundary. It transforms ephemeral experiences into concrete evidence of growth. As your boundary pushing continues, your sense of normalcy recalibrates. Projects or social situations that once were unthinkable start to feel routine. You might surprise yourself by volunteering for leadership roles, initiating creative collaborations, or traveling solo without hesitation. By then, you're not forcing yourself to be bold. Boldness has become second nature. You've internalized the principle that comfort is best visited in short intervals for rest, but not a place to reside permanently. It's vital to remain humble in this journey, acknowledging that no matter how adept you become at venturing out, there's always more frontier. There's no final mastery of bold living, just deeper layers of possibility. That's the beauty. Each new skill, environment, or community reveals another horizon to explore. This infinite gradation ensures life stays vibrant, rather than aiming to conquer everything at once. You see it as a lifelong practice of curiosity, readiness, and adaptation. You can integrate the spirit of bold living into long-term planning. Instead of structuring all your objectives as linear paths where each milestone is predefined, leave space for evolution. That might involve setting broad goals, but allowing room for spontaneous changes or side explorations. If you'd like to pivot your career or deepen a personal pursuit, you accept that the route might not be direct. You welcome unexpected connections or skill sets that arise naturally along the way. This acceptance of fluidity preserves excitement, even if you have a strong direction. You remain open to surprising detours. A pivotal aspect is discerning how to gauge your progress. Traditional measures often revolve around end results. Did you secure a promotion, master a new language, or gain widespread recognition? Bold living, however, values incremental evidence that you're pushing boundaries. Did you propose an innovative idea to your peers, sign up for an event you typically avoid, or spend an afternoon learning something wholly new? Each act, regardless of immediate outcome, signals that you're refusing to coast on familiarity. This is progress in its own right, layering new capacities and viewpoints into your daily life. Stress can accompany this approach, particularly if you juggle multiple new experiences. That's why it's crucial to balance periods of challenge with intervals of recovery. Bold living doesn't mean you must constantly push your limits to the brink. You cycle between exploring fresh territory and then retreating slightly to recharge. This cyclical pattern, similar to how muscles grow by alternating between stress and rest, prevents burnout. You remain sustainably open to the next leap forward rather than being exhausted by unrelenting novelty. Noticing the difference between external obligations and self-driven challenges is essential. Often, responsibilities like a job project or family errands might push you out of your comfort zone, but that might not feel empowering if it's forced upon you. By choosing additional voluntary challenges like learning a hobby purely for personal interest or offering to lead an initiative that intrigues you, you reclaim some autonomy. The combination of mandatory and self-chosen challenges can keep your perspective fresh, reminding you that stepping beyond the usual can be on your own terms, not just imposed by circumstance. When you do face a turning point, a big decision, or a chance to pivot, your experiences with smaller steps outside comfort can guide you. You recall the times you overcame hesitation and the benefits that followed, rather than being paralyzed by the magnitude of a major shift. You treat it as an amplified version of the smaller leaps you've already practiced. This approach demystifies significant transitions, letting you break them down or approach them with steadier nerves. The question transforms from, "Am I cut out for this?" to "Which chunk of this new realm can I tackle first?" Empathy for others' comfort zones often increases once you start adjusting your own. Having felt the jitters of the unknown, you better understand their reluctance. You may encourage them gently, sharing personal anecdotes about your own transition from safety to exploration. This fosters supportive relationships where you and others can inspire each other to break limiting patterns. It might even lead you to mentor or guide those who stand where you once stood. Eager but hesitant, your worldview expands as well. The further you venture outside your niche, the more you realize how many ways there are to live, think, and create. You see that your initial definitions of success, happiness, or normality were partially shaped by a limited environment. Interacting with communities or ideas that defy your assumptions can dismantle old stereotypes, fueling deeper curiosity. This broader perspective, in turn, cycles back to your personal life, where you incorporate newly encountered concepts, forging a more dynamic existence. You might incorporate occasional reflection on the goals you set in your comfort-based mindset versus the ones that emerged when you allowed yourself to dream bigger. The difference can be startling. People who release themselves from safe illusions often re-envision ambitions. Maybe they shift from just wanting a stable job to desiring an impactful career, from wanting a calm retirement to hoping for a meaningful legacy. This re-envisioning becomes possible precisely because stepping out gave them proof that they can handle more variety and challenge than they initially suspected. Handling uncertainty gracefully requires an attitude that's part realism, part optimism. You acknowledge obstacles or a lack of guaranteed outcomes, but maintain the conviction that you'll adapt, learn, and reorient. This stance resonates well with a bold lifestyle because it fosters iterative growth. Each new foray is not pass, fail, but refine, persist. You keep refining your strategy, letting new data shape your approach, culminating in ongoing advancement. Relationships evolve in surprising ways too, because each time you take on something unfamiliar, you often need a helping hand or a piece of advice, forging new bonds or deepening existing ones. People see your vulnerability in stepping outside comfort, and many respond with encouragement, forging connections that are more genuine than the polite distance that may define interactions in stable routines. Over time, your network diversifies, and that diversity keeps you exposed to fresh opportunities. Interactions in stable routines over time, your network diversifies, and that diversity keeps you exposed to fresh opportunities. Tangible or intangible journaling helps anchor you in your progress. Some keep a boldness board pinned up, listing each new initiative, skill, or scenario they tackled. Others might use an audio diary, briefly stating, "Today I tried X, felt awkward at first but ended up learning Y." Reviewing these notes infuses a sense of continuity into what might feel like random leaps. You see it as an unfolding story, a story you're writing with each attempt, however small it might look from the outside. Physical well-being can benefit from this mindset. If you're trapped in a physical comfort zone, like never pushing your strength or endurance, introducing mild challenges can revitalize your body. That could mean hiking a bit farther than usual, trying a new form of movement, or signing up for a short athletic event. Surpassing the presumed boundary of comfort not only strengthens muscles and joints, but proves that your sense of limitation was at least partially mental. Overcoming the comfort trap eventually simplifies your future leaps. Experience fosters trust in the process. You grow to expect that, yes, stepping out often spurs some anxiety and potential stumbling, but it typically yields a net gain. So each subsequent time, the mental barrier is lower. An intriguing outcome is that the line between comfort and discomfort continuously moves as you explore. Something that once seemed unthinkable slowly becomes your normal. This can apply to your professional life, personal interactions, or creative endeavors. As your normal expands, you look back and marvel that you used to consider these experiences unattainable or terrifying, realizing that growth is infinite. You develop a lifelong pattern of pushing edges, yet it's important to retain a sense of direction. Bold living isn't about chasing novelty blindly. It's about ensuring you're not imprisoned by stale routines or old self-definitions. So you alternate between leaps and reflection, verifying that each step aligns with a genuine thirst for growth or meaning, not just random excitement. This equilibrium keeps your journey purposeful, preventing a slide into aimless novelty seeking. Family or close friends might resist your changes if they feel threatened by your new openness. They might worry you'll evolve away from them or disrupt shared habits. Navigating these concerns requires communication. Reassure them that your personal development doesn't negate shared bonds. Sometimes they'll join you in small expansions of their own comfort zones, turning potential conflict into mutual evolution. Even if they don't, you can calmly preserve your direction, balancing respect for your connections with the necessity of your own progress. Ultimately, living boldly demands an ongoing commitment to experiment. It's less a single decision, I'll escape comfort now, and more a daily stance, and I'll remain open to the next new step. Over time, this stance results in a life that brims with experiences and depth. The comfort trap, while tempting, pales compared to the vitality and sense of purpose gained from exploring the edges, instead of letting life pass unnoticed under the banner of safety. You actively shape it through curiosity and courage, one uncharted corner at a time. Stepping beyond a life governed by comfort means building a pattern of perpetual discovery, where each new venture, however small, reveals how adaptable you truly are. Removing yourself from familiar grooves isn't about rejecting rest or abandoning what you love. It's about refusing to let routine become your permanent boundary. The real breakthroughs occur once you dare to acknowledge your doubts, face them directly, and make the leap anyway, trusting that even if the outcome is messy, you'll emerge with more insight and capability than before. Every time you push past the easy route, you confirm that growth can happen at any moment. You find fresh ways to learn, stronger connections with others, and a more nuanced picture of who you are. You realize that your identity isn't static. It expands each time you greet discomfort with curiosity rather than avoidance. Where habit once lulled you into predictability, bold living jolts you awake, reminding you that real confidence arises from stepping across that threshold of uncertainty. Over time, what used to feel like risk transforms into an ongoing invitation to explore more fully, to adapt more swiftly, and to experience the richness that a continually evolving life has to offer.